And now, after much technical difficulty, we return you to the second part of the Hold 1005 show here on Late Night Sports Radio.
Woohoo! Sorry about that. We had to survive some computer glitches that are trying to kill us. But we are back. We are ready. I hope you guys have a bunch of tissues because we're going to talk about our favorite Daniel Bryan memories. Robbie, why don't you start?
Well, I think when it comes to Daniel Bryan memories, I want to go back to one that never aired because it was on a house show that I attended back in 2012. It was Daniel Bryan, Kane, and Ryback taking on the Shield. It was a six-man tag. I believe it was. I think it was the Shield they faced. Anyway, after the match, which the good guys won, Bryan and Kane did their big hug, their big spot, and then Bryan looked to Ryback and was urging to hug him, and everyone in the crowd chanted, "Hug it out." As they did, I was there. I did it with no shame. Bryan slowly wraps his arms around Ryback, who just stood there, stiff as a board, just unnerved. Beautiful moment, and it's one of those things. It's one of the reasons why, as a fan, it's worth going to house shows if they're close to where you live.
I think a house show is as close as you can get to like an indie atmosphere because there isn't the pressure of time. There isn't the pressure of, okay, we have to go to this segment's next. We have to go to this camera angle. There isn't all that. It's more of just, okay, you have this number of minutes. Go, wrestle. Go to it.
And you can play around with new ideas, and if they don't work, no harm, no foul. They didn't air on TV. Doesn't matter.
Exactly. So I still have yet to make it to a house show, but I want to. I remember when he debuted on NXT, and he was very much still the American Dragon. He had that awful haircut and no beard, and he was wearing the silk robe still, and they stuck him with The Miz, and they fought. And they fought because Daniel Bryan just couldn't for the life of him win a match on NXT.
And it was funny because when you look back at those moments, a lot of people thought Bryan should have been Mrs. Pro because Bryan is, he's a traveled veteran of the ring, while The Miz it isn't. He's more of the loudmouth, the charismatic guy who Bryan really couldn't match at that particular time.
No. And I think it's just a different style, is all it is. And I just remember being like, this guy is dorky as hell. But I like it.
Little do we know just how popular he was going to be, how successful he was going to be in the future.
I don't think there was ever I don't think anybody ever had an inkling that he was going to blow up.
And to give fans kind of an idea of how weird NXT was, during the course of Bryan's time at NXT, he performed at an obstacle course. He tried to sell merchandise to fans in the crowd, only to toss it away for free. And he struggled to down cups of soda because of the high carbonation.
The carbonation, yeah.
Yeah, he just couldn't do it. And you look at these events and you're like, what is happening? Like, is this wrestling? Like it was a game show.
It was a game show, and there was the punch challenge. They had to see who could punch the hardest. And he chose to kick, and he won because he chose to kick. Because you didn't have to punch, it was to see who could hit the dummy the hardest. And they didn't specify how you had to hit it.
Bryan kicked the crap out of that thing. That was amazing.
He kicked that fucking thing's heads off, And it was a chant. It was a throwback to his ROH days because they would chant at the beginning, "You're gonna get your fucking head kicked in."
I think Keith needs to assign a swear jar.
You mean for me?
No, for the other co-host. Yes, you.
But yes, and one of my fond memories of looking back at Bryan's ROH career when he was a heel as the ROH champion. He had a shaved head and he was very just a straight-laced, straight-up wrestler. He did a lot of submissions and he would put on this illegal submission or he'd be holding onto the ropes and he would go, "I have until 5, referee," and the fans would count all the way to 4 and he would break.
They never got
which is
to
of
do that in
course
WWE.
No, unfortunately not. And that's, of course, where our good friend Maddie gets his Tumblr name, which is I have till 5 ref. So I'm saving my big one for last because I know I'm probably going to cry.
Fair enough. Fair enough. As far as other big moments are concerned, I want to talk about this one particular match, and it's one that I want to talk about in greater detail in an article that will drop on 87sportsfans.com. Look out for that on Sunday. It's Daniel Bryan versus Cesaro in that gauntlet match on Monday Night Raw. If you remember, Daniel Bryan had to face 3 opponents in succession, as per the authorities' orders. Bryan managed to tap out Jack Swagger to the Yes Lock in the first match. Then Cesaro came in as the second match, and those two tore it the hell up. This was everything a wrestling match should have been, and it gave me faith in what a TV wrestling match can be. Just stiff uppercut exchanges from both guys. Cesaro getting the better end of it, of course. And a really good reversal from Bryan. Cesaro going for that big uppercut after launching Bryan to the air. Bryan catching Cesaro into a small package for the win. Creative reversal from Daniel Bryan, and it's a match that, usually during the third hour or so of Raw, I'm usually tuned out. I'm online doing something else. I'm reading an article or whatever. I wasn't doing that during this match. I was dead focused on the TV. They kept my attention, and that's all you can ask for.
And of course, Claudio and Bryan are old friends. They were tag team partners in Chikara numerous times. They were always road buddies, rolling up and down the roads together, going to get Cesaro's fucking coffee because he's a coffee addict. I'm already crying, so whatever. The one time I got to see Bryan wrestle was in New Orleans in the Superdome. And I remember when he beat Triple H, that arena, there was very few times that show where that arena went dead quiet. And you could hear like 80,000 people just dead quiet. And he beat Triple H to go on to the main event. And I thought they couldn't get louder then. And then we come to the final match, and he wins. And the confetti starts coming down. And that crowd was so fucking loud. I could feel it in my bones. Like you could feel the vibration.
Yeah, when you look back at that WrestleMania, would it be fair to say that it was the fans' WrestleMania? Because it felt like a show that wasn't really built around WWE's goals, but it was
No, it
made
was,
for us.
and it started back when the fans hijacked Raw,
And this
when they
was
were
short.
getting ready to unify the World Heavyweight title and the WWE title. It was supposed to be John and Randy, and Bryan's
Yeah,
there in the background, and it was in Seattle, and the crowd just hijacked the show to the point where Cena could not continue. He had to break character and acknowledge it.
yeah. And I don't want to hear anyone tell me, "Oh, it's Seattle, it's Washington, it's where Bryan lives." Of course, he's gonna get a big reaction. I don't think I've ever heard a hometown or home state reaction quite like this.
No.
You don't hear this in Boston, Massachusetts for John Cena or St. Louis, Missouri for Randy Orton. This is something else. Like, this was special.
It was very special, and I remember that whole run up to it. Like, it was very Cinderella. It was very, this is not supposed to, this is not what we want, but this is, we're giving it to you, so you'll just shut up. And I don't think they expected the sheer amount of love. And because we all have been in that position where the man is like, you can't do this. And we want to stand up and say, yes, we can. And this is Daniel Bryan standing up for all of us saying, yes, I can. Give me the ball and let me run with it. I can do this.
And could you imagine if WWE didn't let him do that, and if it was just Randy Orton versus Batista at WrestleMania?
I would have left before the end of the show.
That crowd would have either A, rioted, or B, left after the Taker match.
I would have left after the Taker match. Because
Especially
I don't want to be caught in a riot.
no.
And B, that's not what I wanted. I wanted to see somebody that I could identify with getting the opportunity of a lifetime. And then to see him do it. And then the first thing that he did when he got out of the ring, and the first thing that came up on the screen was him taking Connor from his dad's arms. And that's just an image that is just seared in my memory, and I love that one to death.
Like that night felt like everything was just perfect. Everything felt like it was aligned. Cesaro won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal earlier. The Shield trounced Corporate Kane and the New Age Outlaws. AJ Lee was the Divas champion. Everything felt, just about everything felt right. And that moment just capped it off.
It did. Triple H got beaten. The entrances were really cool, except for the Undertaker's. It was just... also, don't sit where the pyro is, because it gets really, really, really hot.
That it does.
And I have a whole bunch of confetti because I was sitting I was like the second to last row by the rear wall section by the stage. And they had these giant fans, and they would just put handfuls of the confetti in there to blow out into the crowd. So, of course, we're just getting dumped on
By confetti.
by confetti. Because with the Superdome, there was no way for them there was no catwalk system for them to get up and drop it from above. So they had to use these giant industrial fans. And since we were so close to the fan, we just got dumped on. So I still am pulling confetti out of that purse whenever I get into it. I'm like, oh, there's more confetti. More confetti.
It's the gift that never ends.
No. And I have pictures. I need to pull out my scrapbook and look at them. But that was the second WrestleMania I've been to, but it was definitely one of the highlights. And the only way I'm going back is if I'm taking you with me. So
I think we can arrange that.
we just have to wait for them to go to a not so hot climate, because I would melt in Texas.
Yeah. And trust me, I think you'd be better off at, maybe a New Jersey or Madison Square Garden, because I don't even know if they'll ever do a WrestleMania at Madison Square Garden.
I would love to see WrestleMania at Madison Square Garden. I'd love to see anything at Madison Square Garden. And the fact that Brian got to go there and just... Thank you isn't enough for everything. No. And of course, we're just glossing the surface. There's so much. They need to put out a goddamn DVD of this. They need to do a DVD.
Yeah, I'm sure that they have something in the works. Maybe a big Daniel Bryan anthology DVD set of his greatest matches. Hell, get a couple, get a couple FCW matches and ROH matches. Work with the company and have them.
Exactly. I mean, they worked with them to let. Somebody's getting sick, by the way.
Me.
And it's not me. Yes, you.
That's Robbie.
They did the deal with Punk where he could go in there and go see the facility, and they used some of the footage. So I don't see why they couldn't do that again. And I think that would be really special. What they need to do is dig up that old Memphis footage of Brian working with William Regal. Because when he came in 2010, that was not the first time he was signed to WWE. Because he was signed to Developmental back when Developmental was in Memphis. It was Memphis Championship Wrestling back in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
And he can't swim or go underwater because he has a ruptured eardrum from a match with Kenta, who we now know as Hideo Itami.
And he never got that eardrum fixed, Brian. did.
No.
Hopefully now he
That's
can.
why he still can't go swimming and he still can't go underwater.
Hopefully now he'll be able to get that fixed up. Now that he's away from wrestling and he has the time in his hands.
Maybe. He does have some hearing problems in that ear, but it doesn't bother him. So
No, maybe
I
it's for
think
the
on that
best.
it is, and unfortunately that's the cards we're dealt. And I saw a quote, it's not having a good hand in life, it's playing a bad hand well.
And when you think about it, Brian was not given the best of hands. It
Mm-mm.
almost seemed like at the start, Brian in WWE was never going to ascend higher than a certain point. But, the man showed that hard work, perseverance, and just sheer talent can help you in the long run. You just have to be willing to put in the work. You might have to take a few losses. You might have to get involved in a crappy romance angle. You might even have to get passed up for somebody else who might not be as deserving.
Or you
But
might have to give up your lifestyle. The man was a vegan and he had to give it up because he had a hard time finding vegan food on the
yeah,
road because became intolerant to soy, which if you know anything about vegan foods is 99% of it is soy based, and he couldn't have it. So the man gave up his lifestyle for wrestling.
maybe he'll be able to adopt it once more. I think that yeah,
He's
and
still on a modified. He has some protein, but I don't think he does a lot.
yeah, and just the way that he talks about the vegan lifestyle, about how he has more energy to do things other than digest complex food. I think he could get back into that and be healthy, be healthier than he was.
Quite possibly, but I think on that note, we'll just go ahead and say thank you, Brian, for everything.
Thank
We'll
you.
never forget you, and we love you. And we'll see you next week only on Late Night Sports Radio. This is the Hold 1005 podcast.